Afternoon everyone, I'm on the Norfolk coast today, and I'm here for a few days, and I'm going to be basically photographing seals for the next 3 days. I do it every year and I'm really looking forward to that. But as the title suggests on this video, this is not about seal photography, for two reasons really. The first one is I've done 3 or 4 videos about seal photography on the Norfolk coast, so I think we've probably covered that now on my channel. And secondly, the videos never seem to do that well. For some reason, videos about photographing grey seals on the Norfolk coast are okay, but they don't do brilliantly. So let's get back to what this video is about. And it's all about asking the question, is it worth photographing common subjects? And the reason I thought about this is because grey seals on the Norfolk coast, or all around the UK actually, but on the Norfolk coast and Lincolnshire coast in particular, are really, really common. But does that mean you can't get great pictures? And of course it doesn't. So I thought we'd discuss this and look at a few different pictures, some pictures of different bird species, maybe a couple of seal pictures as well, and discuss why I think it's a really good idea to photograph common subjects and not just go for rare, the rarer stuff. So I think it depends really what your outlook is. And if you're sort of an avid twitcher, then you might want to concentrate on the rare stuff. Whereas if you're more into wildlife photography in general, then the common stuff can be absolutely brilliant. It can give you so many great picture opportunities, and that's what we're going to discuss next.
We've got a pair of coots here, and they are really common water birds. They're found on pretty much every pond, lake and river in the UK, and that's a really good thing for us because there are so many coots. It means they're not hard to photograph, and because they're not hard to photograph and we see them all the time, it means that there's much more chance of observing and photographing some really great behaviour. And as you can see here, I've got a pair of coots, and it's just before the breeding season, and they are really fighting. And not only does that show a piece of animal behaviour, but it gives me a really good opportunity for action photography. And the other thing is I can experiment a little bit. I photograph these at 1/640th of a second, which means it's fast enough to freeze the motion of the animals, but you get a little bit of movement in some of the wingtips, so it adds a little bit more energy. Now if this was a rare subject, there's no way that I'd probably see this behaviour, because it takes ages just to find a rare bird or a rare animal sometimes, and secondly there's no way I could experiment either, because it's maybe that once in a lifetime opportunity. So the fact that these coots are common gives me not only much more opportunity to see this type of behaviour, but also when I do see it I can experiment a little bit, because it probably is not going to be the last time I see a pair of coots fighting, because there's so many of them. So common subjects are great things to photograph.
So there's probably 2 reasons you might want to photograph common subjects. The first one would be is for practice, because with a common subject you're going to be able to photograph it many times, and it means you can really hone your photographic skills, your photographic wildlife photography skills. So when you're first starting out in wildlife photography, picking the common subjects is a really good idea. And the second reason is because they are common, you're going to have a lot more time with these animals, so it means you can get really interesting behaviour, really interesting action, so that intimate sort of interaction between maybe 2 animals, or that really split-second piece of action that you might not be able to capture if it's a rare subject that you don't see very often. So there's lots of good reasons why photographing a common subject is a very good idea, and they're the 2 main ones I would say.
Our next pictures are of a common tern. Now as the name suggests, in my part of the UK common terns are fairly common, but I do have to turn up at the right time. So common terns normally migrate into the UK in the summer, and they breed here and then migrate back out again. And if I turn up at the right time, it means I've got a common subject that's going to be there, and it gives me loads of time to practice. Now of course I do need, even with common subjects, to know a little bit about the behaviour of the animal. If I turn up in the winter, then I'm not going to see any common terns, because they're simply not going to be here. So you still need to do your research and work out the behaviour of the animal. But if I turn up at the right time, I'm going to have loads of common terns to practice. Now I can practice my flight shots, I can look for interesting behaviour, I can practice using different angles of light, and again that's a great thing about photographing a common subject. Now I've got pictures of a common tern fishing, with fish in its beak, which is great. And if you look at these shots here, this happened multiple times. So for anyone that's starting out in photography, and certainly bird photography, if you want to practice birds in flight shots, find something that's common, that's going to give you plenty of practice, because the more you practice, the better you're going to get. It's not easy to follow a bird in a viewfinder and get the composition sorted out properly and also get it sharp. So modern technology does help, but you still need that an amount of dexterity, I would say. So the more you practice, the better you're going to get. And if you use common subjects such as gulls, or in this case common terns, that gives you plenty of hours of practice to hone those skills. And as I say, the other thing that's great is because I can start playing around with different lighting conditions. I can turn up when the lights are backlighting a common tern, as in if you look at this picture here, this common tern's backlit, so it gives me a completely different feel to the shot. I can front light them, turn up at the location when there's front light on the tern. I can turn up a new side light, although I probably wouldn't do that. So it gives me the opportunity to practice not only the basic skills of photography, but also how light affects my subject. And then if you look at this last picture, this was really hard to get for me. I've got a picture of a common tern just taking a drink, and you've got the beak just touching the water with the reflection. And again, if this was a really rare subject, a really rare bird, and I miss the shot, then I'm very rarely going to have the chance to get it again. But with a common subject, if you miss it the first time, you might get it the second time, the third time, or the fourth time. Mute swans, again, are a very common water bird. We find them on rivers, lakes, all over the UK, which means I can be very selective, again, when it comes to the type of pictures I take of these swans. And if you look at these shots, these were taken just a couple of weeks ago, and it was one of those fantastic hoar-frost mornings, so frost everywhere. And as I was actually setting up my camera gear, I was parked next to this big lake, and and all the trees in the background were covered in frost. The parts of the lake was frozen. It was just fantastic, a winter wonderland. And then this swan just flew in, and I didn't panic because there were other swans around. So I've got the chance probably of more than one swan landing on this lake, and I've got some lovely shots of the swan landing with the frost in the background. Now, if I'm waiting for a really rare subject, I'm probably not going to see one. So the fact that swans are a common subject means I've got much greater chance of capturing that animal in these really unusual, for my part of the country, I'm in Essex in the UK, so we don't get frost very often. So I've got much more chance of capturing some lovely winter wonderland shots, so a landscape pretty much with a swan in it, than if I'm waiting around just for a really unusual subject, a really unusual bird or a really unusual animal. So the common subject again wins out here, and the thing that makes it interesting are the weather conditions. So with a common bird or a common animal, I've got much more chance of capturing those under either unusual or fantastic lighting conditions, unusual or fantastic weather conditions. It just basically gives me a greater percentage of a success, and I think that's why we shouldn't rule out common subjects. It gives us photographers some absolutely brilliant photo opportunities. Little egrets are a fantastic wading bird. I absolutely love photographing these birds. Now 25 years ago, they were really rare, but over the last 20 years or so, they've done really well, and the numbers have gone up and up and up in England in particular. And again, it means that because we see a lot of them, we get a chance to photograph them in different ways. And if you look at these two shots, it's great for practicing flight shots, landing shots, taking off shots. And on the second picture, I've managed to photograph these two landing, but in front of a really dark background, and by darkening the background down a little bit more post-production, it makes these egrets really stand out, almost like they're doing a ballet as they're landing. And again, it's this common subject, the fact that I've got egrets coming in and out probably all afternoon, taking off and landing. It gives me a chance to experiment with these different effects and also hone my skills as well, of course, because flight shots, taking off shots, landing shots are, quite tricky sometimes. And again, with the mallard is super common, and these shots are taking off. I've altered I've used a slightly unusual composition. Normally, you'd put the mallard on 1/3 of the frame with all the negative space on the opposite side, so the mallard's got room to fly into or land. But in this case, because there was all these splashes of water behind the mallard, I put it on the opposite side, so there's the room is behind the mallard, or the negative space is behind it, which you wouldn't normally do. But again, because it's a common subject, I can experiment compositionally, as well as experimenting with light and just general practice, and it gives me these opportunities to try different things. As I've already mentioned, grey seals are a really common sea mammal in the UK. We have huge numbers of grey seals, but that doesn't mean they're not great to photograph. I love photographing grey seals. They're fantastic mammals to photograph. And when you first go down onto a beach, it looks as if there's not a lot going on because the seals are just laying there. But if you wait around and just spend a bit of time, loads of behaviour starts to become apparent. And if you look at this shot here, we've got the mum and the pup just touching noses, or just about to. And that's what you're waiting for, these little bits of behaviour. And then there's the pup, and it's just sucking its claws. And you'll see the pups rolling around, you'll see the pups and the mums interacting. Occasionally you'll see a couple of bulls fighting. And also what you often see is a female fighting off a male if she's not ready to mate. Or sometimes they can be quite aggressive when they're actually getting ready to mate. You know, it's that sort of ritual, like almost they'll roll around in the sea and they'll push each other away. So all in all, even though grey seals are a very common subject, because you see a lot of them, you've got this opportunity to pick out all of this behaviour, which you might not get if it's a really rare subject, because there might be just one or two of those animals and they're not going to display all the behaviour that you might see if you're at something like a grey seal colony where there's loads of grey seals. It gives you the opportunity to pick out behaviour to a much greater degree. So that's why, again, I think it's great to visit places with these common subjects and really learn about the behaviour, and you get some absolutely cracking photographs into the bargain. Red deer can be found all over the UK. Again, they are unbelievably common, but especially during the rut in October, there's some fantastic photo opportunities. So, you know, it doesn't need to be a rare animal, and I've got quite a few pictures coming up, or a few pictures coming up, of red deer in the mist. And again, that's a beautiful thing to photograph. And again, because they're common, I'm not going to spend days and days and days trying to find these animals, which means I can spend the time looking for behaviour again, looking for the right weather conditions, because I photograph red deer pretty much every year, and maybe one morning out of maybe 5, 6, 7 mornings you might get the mist. Now, if I can't find that animal on that day, then I don't get the shots. So the fact there's lots of red deer around, I can generally find a red deer or a group of red deer, and I've got that opportunity to photograph them in the mist. And of course, because they're a common subject, just like the seals, you get a chance to look at the behaviour. The stags bellowing, the males and the females interacting, and sometimes the stags actually rutting, fighting, you know, looking for dominance so that they can mate with the females. So again, all in all, even though there's stags and stags around everywhere, they're a very, very common animal. They're also fantastic to photograph.
So yeah, I hope you found this video useful and you've enjoyed it. And if you have enjoyed it, if you can give it a thumbs up, a like, that would really help my channel, and it's much appreciated. It's free to like a video. And by the same token, if you haven't already subscribed to my channel, if you could think about subscribing, that would be also great. The more the merrier. And again, it's free to subscribe. And both of those things, along with adding comments, are really, really useful for my channel or anybody else's YouTube channel. So thanks very much for watching, and I'll speak to you on my next video. Bye for now.